And yeah, without further ado, Erik and the rest of the panelists, I think just make your way on down. Let's give a round of applause.
Hello? Okay. We don't have very much time and we have a star-studded panel today, so I'm going to do a quick round of introductions one-on-one. We're going to ask some questions about studio economics and models, and then the last 10 or 15 minutes we're going to do Q&A from the audience, so please be ready with dynamic questions. Jamie Byrne, I'm going to start with you, co-founder of Promise Studio, formerly at YouTube, and one of your other co-founders was at YouTube. Let's start there. Is that helpful? What's it like going from YouTube to AI?
Yeah, so I think, so my other co-founder is, some of you may know, is George Strompolis, who was founder of Fullscreen, founder and CEO of Fullscreen, and when we were, starting about starting Promise, one of the things that we recognized was that, the emergence of all of these Gen AI creation tools were birthing a new type of creator, like a new type of artist, a generative AI director who had the ability to tell stories, and now they, narrative structures, they understood those things, but now they had the power of all these tools. And because George and I were both at YouTube at the very beginning, we recognized this as another kind of shifting moment, very similar to the birth of the first wave of the creator economy. And so we brought that, those experiences into the founding of Promise. And then we added, Dave Clark, who's, arguably one of the, not even arguably, he's like the leading, Gen AI filmmaker, director in the space. And that formed our founding team.
Jamie, I sometimes think it's easier to see what's going to lead than it is to explain it, but we have a little video that you've been working on. Can you set up why this is representative of your studio?
Sure. So we're working on a lot of different, intellectual concepts internally, a lot of projects that we are exploring from an IP point of view. We're also experimenting and doing a lot of R&D to try to push the space forward, to try to reach higher fidelity levels. And so what we're going to show now is the behind the scenes of a project called NinjaPunk, which is an original concept that Dave has developed. And what you'll see here is kind of a combination of how we're combining generative AI tools with traditional filmmaking techniques, and then also keeping emphasis and a focus on human expression and the artistry that goes behind, making fantastic films and television.
Can we see the video?
Creating cinematic stories with true artistic quality requires a team of artists, people with bold imagination, a clear creative vision, and a deep love for the craft of filmmaking. Our latest project, NinjaPunk, is set in the neon-lit streets of Los Angeles in 2065. The story follows a cybernetic ninja on a path of vengeance after his wife's murder, only to uncover a hidden underworld where ancient powers collide with futuristic warfare. After the script is complete, we use generative AI to world build and explore our characters. Live-action performances are captured alongside Hollywood's elite stunt teams and actors. But that's just the beginning. Let's hear from Rob.
Filmmaking is always about bringing the best to the forefront. As filmmakers, we're using all the tools in the tool chest to move the story forward. As an AI-native studio, we're looking to the future of filmmaking and how we can utilize this technology to help us tell stories in the best way possible. We're blending photography from our lead actors and motion capture from our stunt performers with VFX and generative AI material. Many of these techniques are well established, but when we add Gen AI, it allows us to ideate and iterate rapidly. We're still using people for every step, and everything is guided by human creativity.
This isn't plug-and-play filmmaking. It's a dance between art and technology. At Promise, we're not replacing tradition, we're expanding it, using AI to enhance storytelling, captivate audiences, and open bold new frontiers in cinema.
So, Katie, kind of a mix of humanity and AI. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on the project that we're working on, the mix may be very different. In this particular case, you might have seen there was a very complicated fight sequence. That's hard to do today in generative AI. So we realized that we needed a performance team to choreograph that fight sequence. We brought that into kind of a 3D tooling, and then use kind of generative AI to kind of mesh over their textures and things of that nature. And so using that kind of combined techniques of human expression, and then Gen AI techniques with traditional filmmaking techniques, again, lets us get to a higher level of control. Directors typically want to be able to control the camera. Maybe you want to move it. You didn't like the way the shot looked here. You want to be able to shift the camera. So by mixing these different tools and techniques, we give that level of control, and then we end up with a higher level of fidelity in the finished product that we're in.
Thanks, Jamie. Jeff, I'm going to come to you now. The genesis of GRAiL, how did it come into being? What's the unique proposition that your studio is bringing to the world of AI and filmmaking?
I think that we're very fortunate at GRAiL, as we saw the emerging market coming into being, with so many people starting to use AI tools, and the argument on either side as to where the value was. Was it in the technology? Was it in the ideation? Was it in the visuals? My answer was always, it's in the storyteller. And so as we created GRAiL, we wanted to give a home for filmmakers to be able to discover, through the breadth of myself and my partner Davide's long experience from the advertising, film, television, music, and publishing business, the ability to tell a story however they felt that they wanted to tell it, whether it would be exclusively AI, whether it was a live action AI hybrid, which we're now starting to see with our clients, Phantom X, who dropped Echo Hunter this morning, if you've had a chance to see that. And I think that we really wanted to make sure that in these kind of unsettling waters that Hollywood and the industry is really pushing forward, less so than the consumer, we're seeing that people really have an appetite to be storytellers, and the kind of bad habits of the 20th century, the gatekeeping, the barriers, those are all coming down, and we're there to help shepherd people into, especially tremendous storytellers working in this medium, and into telling their vision the way that they want.
So it's down with the aristocracy and greater scope for creators. I believe you have a sizzle as well. Could we take a look at it? And could you set it up, please?
Well, this is a compilation of some of our talent that we have at GRAiL.
Thanks.
Everyone here is so lucky to be seeing this on the big screen.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it on the big screen, especially in a theater, and I saw that corner right there, and it looked amazing.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. Jeff, tell me something. The penchant for AI sampling right now to be in sci-fi and horror and these genres, I noticed that there's a lot of sci-fi in your clips. What's driving you to that genre?
Well, it's mainly the filmmakers who are working with us right now that's what they're focusing on. I would say that two of our filmmakers, Ryan Patterson and Alex Tissier, both are very focused on dramatic. And right now, we're waiting for the tools to kind of catch up to their visions. If you haven't had a chance to see it, Ryan Patterson's short about an ice skater, The Ribbon, is probably one of the best dramatic shorts made with AI that you'll see. And Alex, I believe, just won an award for Anakin, his recent, which is a real life take on an abusive situation inspired by Star Wars. You kind of have to see it to really understand it. Very, very, very amazing, very French. But the answer to your question is, right now, the tools in the application, if you think about it from a base level, when you're watching a horror movie, for the most part, horror, you're seeing half a picture. It's the absence of light, it's the fear that you're creating. Science fiction, you can't hide the details as much, so it's throwing everything at it. And as I, having not created the technology myself, it seems that we're seeing the best results from those two genres, so I couldn't tell you what necessarily each different model has been trained on, but it feels as though a lot of Blu-rays of Transformers and Transmorphers for the Walmart buyers.
Are pushing up, okay. Very interesting. John, I'm going to come to you next. Jon Flynn, head of go-to-market at AI go-to-market at Google. You've been in AI for a while. You were at IBM before AI was a cool thing, at Microsoft, at Apple. I mean, the market cap of the companies you're working on collectively is intimidating. How is Google viewing AI and its role in Hollywood?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I mean, I have the privilege of being on, and firstly, I'm punching way above my weight on this panel here. I think these esteemed panelists of mine have more talent than I will ever have in my entire life. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this, right? But at Google, where we look at the intersection of media entertainment and AI is that it's really twofold, right? There's the stuff that you're seeing now. There's the creative output. There's the visual aspect of creating something from a prompt or from an image or from a video and creating something that didn't exist, that wasn't filmed with a camera, so to speak. And then there's the other side of it, which I and my team will laugh at this, right? I call the boring side. It's the business of the business, right? It's what we do to make sure that stuff gets up on the screen. It's to make sure that the studios evolve into AI studios or form net new AI studios, and they are able to have the talent come out and film. Like we were saying in the earlier panel, let the actors act, right? But how do we do that? We use that through AI, helping the business rationalize costs, helping them become more efficient so they can get more content out there. So it's really a twofold position. It's super interesting as well because they're very, very different roles, but they all culminate and come together in this magic scene that you're seeing some of them here today.
John, you brought a sample that includes the Wu-Tang Clan, which I never thought I'd be on a panel where I'm talking about the Wu-Tang Clan, but that's amazing. And a very talented AI filmmaker, Jason Zada, who we've covered frequently in The Angler as kind of a leading voice. I'm wondering if you could set up this video.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to try and be cool, so I brought out the Wu-Tang Clan. To be honest with you, that's about all I got. But actually, Jason Zudd is next door, and he's giving a chat in Auditorium 2 about his work on Mandingo, which is a Wu-Tang Clan song, which is phenomenal. And he shot the video using Google's VO2 model exclusively. Right, so there was other bits and pieces that he did with other tools, but the video generation was done with VO2. He's announcing some cool stuff next door as well, so be sure to hook up with him and check out what he's doing. But I chose this scene because it pays an homage to the Wu-Tang Clan's hometown, and it's pretty funny how he used AI to reimagine what that would look like to the song.
Ain't no disrespect, it's only dollars we collect. Niggas go hard, so protect your neck. Hood life, that's what I should like, we should like. Pussy all day, wish honey's a good night. Pussy always, and my money's a good fight. I bite your ear off when it's time to get high. Hockey wardrobe king, all kinds of outfits. My whole repertoire's just rhymes and outlets. I don't gotta worry, cause y'all don't know nothing. I be outside and y'all be so frontin'. Try to ride with y'all, but y'all don't know function. Stop trying to rhyme, none of y'all can spit. Fuck all of y'all, you can suck.
That was the cleanest version I could find.
So it's pretty clean.
It's pretty funny as well. I mean, if you look at it, it reimagined Staten Island, where they're from, right? So it had everything in there. The thing that I love about it is that you look at and VO2 is now, we've announced VO3, but you look at the quality of what they're able to get, right? You see the snow, the texture on the person, you see the Staten Island ferry coming and going, and the continuity of between shots. I just thought it was pretty cool.
Very cool. We're going to go back to the business model of VO2 and 3 in a bit. Rachel, Joy, Victor, last but not least, you are co-founder of FBRC.ai. And can you tell us a little bit about what the mission of that business is, and how you have kind of a design background. How did you get involved in AI and starting this business?
Yeah, so similar to your note about doing AI before it was cool, my undergrad was in computational neuroscience, so way before it was cool, studying AI and robotics. Was really interested in pulling that into interactive and immersive storytelling, so I worked a lot in the VR, AR, LBE kind of space. I was a creative lead at Alex McDowell's studio, who was production designer of Minority Report, so I've always been in the emerging tech space, and then reached a point when I was doing a lot of work with brands where it felt like a limiting factor, the capacity of what we could create. And, you know, having studied AI, I had pulled it in different ways into projects, previous iterations before generative AI, and finally felt it was at a point of like, okay, we can start actually building things that can accelerate the creative process. What do those tools look like? How do we shape them? And co-founded FBRC.ai. So we're situated as an ecosystem hub. We work with studios that are experimenting with these new tools and help them with that. We help startups and advise startups that are building these new tools, and then we do events for creators, help them upskill with these tools, including co-producing AI on the Lot. So thank you all for being here. But as a part of that, yeah, I think the design piece is really important as we think about these tools and like what do they mean, how do they fit into how we think about how these business models are evolving as well. And we did 2 months ago, we released an AI studio report that surveyed 100 of AI studios that exist, all from kind of mom and pop, 1 person to 3 person, kind of really mini studios that are popping up, to the Promises and the GRAiLs, and looked at kind of how they're thinking about tooling and how the tooling is evolving. And I think the thing that's really interesting about the space right now is that there is this capacity for increasing expression and democratizing the tools to some extent, but there's also, I think we're seeing really interesting things where we're pushing the technology forward, and these it's not just a fully generative pipeline, it's these generative processes that start to get incorporated.
You had a slide or a shot that I think was sort of interesting in talking about AI native studios versus kind of pipelines. Could we bring up that slide up maybe? I thought that was an interesting way of viewing it.
Yeah. So I mean, we think of this like gradient of AI utilization. On the one hand, we have like end-to-end tools that really lean into going as far as you can with generative. So to your point, John, with like VO3 coming out now with Flow, there are tools that have a lot built in that you can really go really far with generative. But then you have a lot of kind of tools that take it a step further of, yes, I'm going to use these models, but I'm going to mix and match my models. I'm going to have a bit more control. I'm going to use tools like Comfy UI. Then you go like a step down and you have hybrid processes with a core generative AI element. So kind of the Ninja Punk example of there's elements of AI that are a key part of that pipeline, but it's still using elements of live action, motion capture, and then AI is augmenting pieces of it. And then when you go all the way to the other end, you have the AI efficiencies within traditional production that maybe aren't even fully generative. It's a mix of generative, machine learning, those things that we've been seeing happening for a while. You have typically increasing control as you move to this right side, but you have maybe more increasing efficiency and further that you can go with fewer people sometimes when you move towards the left side. And so part of the trade-off when we're talking about business models, there are 2 sides to it, right? One is the production side, how are you reducing costs? The other is the audience side, how are you thinking about distribution, who the audience is? This is kind of talking about what did the trade-offs look like on the production side.
And thank you. And Jamie and Jeff, I would guess that you're in between or all. It doesn't seem like you're on one end or the other of this.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the film or the series that we're working on.
Yeah.
I think if it's something that's maybe more animation style, you'd see that be a little bit more Gen AI with some traditional tooling mixed in. Something like Ninja Punk is probably further this way.
That's the same. It's specific to each production as to how we're going to go about what we're going to do. And we've been pretty good about being creative with different models to allow the creators at the end of the day to own and maintain control of their own work.
Okay, so let's get to the business side. So I look at the creative talent on the stage, I look at the money coming into the industry, and the efficiency. I don't know how, can you be a traditional studio and survive these days? Or will all studios be AI studios? Is there going to be a distinction? John?
I think that the notion of a traditional studio and an AI studio as separate entities is going to be short-lived, right? We don't think of a digital editing suite anymore. We don't think of traditional or cloud anymore, right? We all just think of it, they all converge together. So I think we're just going to have studios, and within studios there's going to be traditional workflows and there's going to be AI workflows, and there's going to be a combination of each. And they are, as you just said, Jeff and Jamie, like it's going to be dependent on what the output calls for at that particular time, what the showrunner wants to use, what the creatives feel like they would get their best end product out of using. Right, so it is becoming, and today we've heard conflicting reports of AI as a tool or AI is not a tool. Right? I believe it is a tool. I believe it's a tool the same way that a camera is a tool, the same way that a light is a tool, the same way that the editing suite is a tool. So I think the notion of a studio and AI studio coming together is something that we're going to see very, very soon. And I think that we're going to see the competitive advantage be the way that you use your AI capabilities within your studio and how you enable your human creativity to use those AI tools within that particular studio to the way that they want to affect the outcome that they want. That's going to be the competitive advantage.
Jeff, good.
Actually, to add to that, because I agree with everything that you just said, but even to go one step further, I've met with, over the last couple of months, almost every studio, network, streamer, and everyone says the same thing. Look, we're hemorrhaging money. We're trying to cut costs down. Even if you're having a success with something, used to be sequels, the budget went up, now the budget comes down. TV seasons used to be, budgets went up, but the more success you had, now they want even the talent taking the cuts down for the success that they're having. And they're like, so how can you help us do what we're doing and make it cost effective? And you have a very similar conversation every time, but the end result, and I'm going to borrow a line from Ryan Gosling in The Big Short, I'm standing in front of a burning building and I'm offering you fire insurance on it. And that's the reality here, is that if cost is the ultimate thing, if the consumer isn't buying as much as it was before, if the streaming model is slowly starting to leak at the seams, then the cost is going to have to come down, the efficiency is going to come up. But I would say, and I'm going to speak for our talent, we would prefer it doesn't come at the expense of the writers,
right,
the actors, and especially the directors, whether they're coming from the AI world or the traditional filmmaking world.
Jamie, that's super interesting, but all of you guys have chosen to do AI studios. Could you have done what you're doing today within a traditional structure, or was it a conscious choice was it a conscious decoupling?
Yeah, I think it's intentional, decoupling. I think at this stage of, where the industry is, you need companies like ours, like at the vanguard, kind of pushing forward. I think, and I also want to build on, some of the earlier comments. The other thing that, I think we're going to see happen, or we're already seeing happen, is that creator empowerment because of the access to the tools, right? And you can't separate that from like what's happening in the space. I remember when we launched, I think we were aware maybe of like 4 or 5, quote unquote AI studios at that time. And then I think most recently, I think you guys even in your report, there was something like 70 or 80 that had launched.
I think we ended up having like 100.
Yeah, and that's from like November till today, right? So what we actually see happening is that there's going to be thousands of small teams that are studios, and whether you call them AI studios or just studios, that's going to be really empowering for the entire entertainment ecosystem. And I think it's a really exciting moment to see, we're going to see more stories and we're going to see more opportunities for artists and creators.
This is a question for everybody. Is there a world where the number of AI studios stays this fragmented, or will there be consolidation? It reminds me in the 20s, there's dozens of studios, and then they all kind of merged. What do you see?
The answer is very simple. There is a world. It's called Mars. The number is 0, and it's going to stay that way.
Okay, great. Okay.
I think one of the
Go ahead, John.
I think one of the things that the studios are going to have, whether they are one person self-created studio or one of the traditional studios that have now have developed their own AI capabilities and they've got their own models, that model becomes their IP, that model becomes monetizable, right? So you're going to see models models of different values in smaller organizations are going to get consolidated into the larger studios because they want to buy that IP because they believe that they can monetize it at a faster rate, or they can short circuit, or they can drive efficiencies to what they do today. So I think we are going to see a consolidation, but I also think we're going to continue to see two parts go, because there is UGC, right? So the user-generated content, the quality of that's going up because the quality of the tools that they have at their disposal are providing better output as well. So I think we're going to see AI as really that tide that lifts all boats from a quality perspective, but I do think we're going to see consolidation for sure.
Yeah, I think part of it is like when we were talking about the studios, there's such a gradient of what those studios look like, right? And to your original question, there's the traditional studios that are implementing things. There are AI studios that are popping up that are being more experimental. I think the AI studios have an advantage because they're not necessarily trying to just change an existing pipeline. They're seeing where the pipeline itself is evolving, so they're able to be more nimble in that way. But within that AI studio approach, there is going to be some consolidation, but we're also seeing the fragmentation of the creator economy of like more people are able to be individual creators. So the advantage that's going to happen around consolidation is like finding what are those replicable distribution pipelines at scale that larger studios are able to tap into, and then maybe bring on the different creators, bring on smaller studios. But I think like because these tools are also letting individual creators go further separately than they would before, we are going to still see like maybe someone is working at a larger AI studio or a larger studio or whatever it becomes, but they have their own thing on the side where they're creating and they're spitting out their own content that they're distributing independently, right? Like I think both of those worlds are going to exist to some extent.
I'm going to be good for a couple more questions, but my brain is starting to hurt from all these intelligent comments. Those who follow me on the Inkler know that I'm generally, I think it's a great creative time for the industry and AI. There was something that pushed me too far, which was the Ghibli thing, which was I guess it's 2 months ago now. It felt like taking advantage of IP in a way that just technically wasn't. Maybe it's legal, maybe it isn't, but it didn't feel right. And then there's a lot of columns now talking about ethical trading and the considerations of IP. How do you, as studio heads, navigate this? How comfortable are you with the training that's going on for your projects?
I think, for us, we want to make sure that we are using copyright compliant models. And so that's one of the reasons why we recently partnered with Google around, VO. I think, as studios that are producing films and series, we're going to want our, films and series protected as well. So it's very important to us. And I think, what we do need is clarity. We need clarity on like where the regulation is going to land, so that we don't have to go into every production and figure out like, can we use this tool or not? So I think that's one of the more important things that needs to happen in the near term.
Jeff, Rachel.
I also think that some of this is like an evolving story, right? Like I think the clean models are getting better. Like I think VO3, the release, like there's some beautiful content that came out of that. And so I think there's that conversation that's evolving. I think there's also the future conversation of when we're talking about AI and like generative visual models, in some ways the cat is out of the bag of like these things have happened. These models were trained to develop Ghibli-like images because you can't trademark a style, which has been the legal framework so far. But I think moving forward, we are going to need to develop new frameworks, and part of that is because of the models themselves, right? If we think about the models as they exist right now, they've been trained on the corpus of human art as it exists, and as we have like a digital archive of it up to this point in history, and they've gotten like pretty good. But if we want to see them continue to get better, if we want to see new styles, if we want to see these things evolve, we're going to need new original content that's not just derivatives of the models that already exist, right? If that's the case, I think moving forward, there's a space for creators to advocate, to say, hey, if you want your model to get better over time, what is the value of my unique art style and my unique, visual point of view to make these models better, and be a part of that conversation moving forward. But I think that's, that's hard to apply retroactively, but I think there's a potential future where, to your point, there's people creating and licensing their own styles in different ways. There's studios creating and owning their own loras and content that they have, right? So there's a world where that kind of continues to evolve, and I think creates more of an ecosystem of supporting creators that are coming to these models with something unique.
As someone who has built my career on, the intersection of entertainment and art, it is essential for me just personally to be copyright compliant in everything that we do. And we have those conversations with our clients, our filmmaker clients, as to how we're producing things moving forward, as well as what the next evolution of this is going to be. We're already working with certain filmmakers, certain artists, in finding new ways for them to join, because this gets us into kind of a Napster conversation where, and having friends that were running those companies in the 90s when the sampling issue really came to the forefront, and everyone had an argument with it, everyone had a problem with it, and then they sorted it out, and everyone's now profiting from that in some ways that they wouldn't have before. And we'd like to see that the artists are being compensated for what's being done on a daily basis, and that's really a holistic part of GRAiL.
I'd like to open up for anybody who has a question. Yes.
Thank you. I know it's just 50 minutes, but I wanted to learn more about distribution. It sounded like development is vastly changing, but the distribution model might still be the same, or is AI also upending that as well?
I mean, I think from our point of view, we're going to lean into the traditional distribution models. I think over time, do new distribution models emerge? Unclear. I think we all expect that this space will also, emerge into immersive content, interactive content. You may need different distribution channels for that, but I think the opportunity now is to produce amazing films and TV and use the traditional.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, right? So distribution is being 100% impacted by AI efficiencies, but in its own workflow, right? I think what we're talking about here is that the content that's being created here using these AI tools or these AI augmented pipelines to bring the content to bear is being distributed over the regular channels, which themselves are being impacted by AI. But I think that flow is just as is for now.
So the question to everybody here is what do you consider to be copyright compliant, and did VO train on YouTube?
So Google's position on VO is it's IP protected. So we have safeguards that you cannot use a public VO model to create IP protected video or content or music or whatever the case may be. We also have safeguards against violence and nudity and sex, and those are all built into the models as a provider, as stated in our terms and conditions and our service level agreements that we have. Where our models were trained, huge corpuses of data, of course. We have a lot of original content that was produced on YouTube that still remains under YouTube's copyright, so absolutely you can use that. It's not to say that VO models can't be used to create IP protected content, but that then becomes a fine-tuning, wholly owned model of whoever the owner of that model is. That's no longer a general purpose Google VO model. That's a VO model that has been fine-tuned and purposely built to create IP specific work. And that's an agreement between Google and that studio that may want to do that. And the safeguards and the legal and the copyright put in there, because just because that model can create IP doesn't mean anyone outside of that studio can use it either. So those protections then become in a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah. So, Rachel and John, you touched on this a little bit. You talked about studios training their own models. I'd love to hear just generally how you're thinking about that from the studio perspective. Are you guys spending a lot of time training your own models, fine-tuning, or using more as trainer models? Or are you predominantly relying on off-the-shelf tools? And how do you see that expanding over the next few years?
I think most of the studios that I've seen and that we work with are doing something custom beyond using just the off-the-shelf tools. So a lot of people are using some version of something like Comfy UI, which if you haven't tried it or looked into it, worth looking into, which lets them plug in different models but also have more control in the process. They also can train their own LoRa's then and then use that as part of the prompting process to say, prompt, use this kind of sub-model that I've created to guide the input further. Here's my trigger word in the prompt to make sure it stays closer to that stylistic reference. I think in terms of, we were talking about like what does it mean to be an AI studio? Part of it means to like understand these capabilities. There's a lot that's changing always with these models. There's a big community of people sharing tips and things around this. And I think the studios that are doing best in the space are the ones that are kind of staying on top of what's changing in the space. But yeah, I think ultimately the studios that are able to go the farthest are those that also have their own internal data sets, have something unique that they're able to train on, or there's the ability to also create new visual styles and create your own LoRa's, right? There's an installation outside with Asteria that did Kuko that also has an interesting workflow video that you should check out. But they worked with an artist to create a ton of images that they then trained a LoRa around and use that for making that specific short.
Jamie and Jeff, how much of your stuff is off the shelf versus customized?
I mean, I think that process describes a lot of what we're doing as well. You need to train, LoRa's and things like that for character consistency, and that could be for a character, it could be for a world, an environment, etc.
Yeah, I agree with Rachel, and same. We're looking as to in some of the things that we're creating, especially the things that we're filming. Those are being retrained, reused, but they're part of our sandbox.
It seems like with not humanity writing and directing, it seems like humanity without writing, directing, and being super talent, that we really don't have anything. It may be a great tool, but it's just an advancement. We're going to come above that. 10 years from now, all the IP is going to be trained on all the IP that was made with AI. So my question is, how many net jobs in the filmmaking business will we have now or 10 years from now versus what we have now? I watched a very complex workflow for what it would take to make a 2-hour film, and it didn't look that much different than right now. So that's my question. How many jobs?
How many jobs lost? Left in the business? I mean, that's incalculable.
Is it? Let's frame it a different way. Is the birth of creative AI going to create more or less jobs? Is it going to be an efficiency play or a growth play?
I don't think production is going to be a zero-sum game, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to exist in what we know of as traditional film and TV. So I think that's where I would gently push back against what you said around distribution. I think distribution pipelines are going to need to evolve, categorically. I think there is going to be things in traditional TV and film, but there is also a lot more content that's being created. UGC continues to scale. Personalized advertisements can continue to scale now with things like generative, right? There are all these different kind of categories of new content that can exist. Including personalization, including interactive, including immersive. I think because of that, we're going to see additional jobs, additional need for content, but not necessarily in film and TV proper.
Well, for me personally, and having worked with filmmakers that have started in the 60s and 70s all the way up to today, I would judge the quality of the product that they were making with substantially less people. And no one really asked the question, how many people did you have working on 2001? They look at the end product and say, was it a good movie that you created? And when we're looking at filmmaking, I'm not looking at it as much in the numbers as I'm looking at it is the storyteller's vision and the people around them and the artists and the writers and those creators, are they being serviced, and will the audience that's consuming the product enjoy it as much as something that was made with 3,000 people? And also the conditions that those people are working under for those 3,000 aren't always ideal. And that's another layer of creating how ideal is the environment that you're making a motion picture or a television series.
I do think the premise starts from the point of view that Hollywood is an aristocracy. It's very difficult to get into, it's expensive, it's time consuming, not very many people can get there. And so maybe it's a false choice of jobs lost in Hollywood versus jobs gained. It just may be redistributed around the world to creative people who now have the tools to compete.
Well, Jon, I think, nailed it earlier when he said it's going to be intellectual property conglomeration and acquisition. For anyone who knows the music business or works in the music business, and you've seen what's happened with the record labels have radically consolidated what they own, and they are now, if you've seen these gigantic library sales happening, they're now becoming intellectual property holders, and they're using that mainly as their source of income, whether it's on streaming, whether it's on the recording and the publishing, depending on how the division is. But you're now seeing, at a slower pace, the studios and networks doing the same thing. It's really about intellectual property consolidation.
Okay, question over here. Oh, sorry, Jon. Go ahead.
Jon, if you'd like to respond before I ask the question, that's fine.
I agree with everything everyone said. Go ahead.
Okay. I've been hearing a lot about creation of content. I haven't heard a lot about discoverability. How is AI going to transform the way we discover new content? Also, I like to go back and watch old movies or stuff that's already completed. So how is the new stuff going to compete with the stuff that's already in the library? And how are people going to discover new stuff if they already have an interest in old stuff, or they just have nostalgia, right? They're just going to go back and watch what you've seen before.
That's a great question. And look, personalization is using AI today, and it's because you watch this, then you must watch that. It's a predictive algorithm, right? It's a predictive model that goes, all right, these are the types of movies that people generally watch after they've seen these 3 films. And that's fine, and it works pretty well, right? And I've seen some and rediscovered some stuff that I hadn't seen before, or I hadn't seen in a while because of the way that it is today. But I think that the way we're seeing it, and we're seeing the evolution of personalization in terms of recommendation, is that it's getting into content-aware recommendation. So if I'm now, for example, if I'm biased towards watching movies that have a certain type of character arc or have a certain type of genre, I can then get better fine-tuned responses back from, then maybe you should watch this. And it could be older content if that's what we as a network or a streamer are pushing, is hydrating our archives and remonetizing them. Let's put the content in front of the people that would like to watch it, versus that we kind of think it's a crapshoot and we'll put a couple of tiles up on the screen and see if they click it, what the whoop, right? But now we get context aware, so we can go from the actual content of the film, the TV show, or the documentary, and we can put it in front of someone who only watches films about summer. For some strange reason, doesn't matter if they're horror, doesn't matter if they're a comedy, if it's a summer movie, they're only watching that. Now we can put that context-aware content in front of them for them to self-select that, all right, cool, that movie really does, subliminally or whatever it is, hits at me, I'm gonna go and watch that. So I think it's an ever-evolving thing, and it's a case of the more data we give a tool to give back to us, the better it's gonna be. So I think we're gonna see a lot more personalization. right? Because nobody wants to be the product at the end of the day. But if I have a medium, whether it's a large screen or a small screen that I'm watching, I have my own information on that device that can play back to me, that knows me, and it's safe to me.
I feel like, Donna, you up here. We have time for one more question, and then we're going to wrap up.
Thank you. Jeff, you mentioned the consolidation of IP and how, we've seen these really big catalog deals. And, 3-4 years ago, the private equity space wasn't in there. It was unheard of, and now they're in it. And I'm wondering, do you anticipate VC private equity in that consolidation of this kind of IP? Do you see it, or do you anticipate it?
I think private equity is money that goes where the money is. So if there's a profit to be made, yes.
Okay, Jamie, are you guys, and Rachel, are you building IP for the long term? Is this something that is factored in the value of the businesses you're creating?
I think the value is always in IP. I mean, at the end of the day, we're telling stories, we're telling things that connect with people, and so the value comes from building something that has that longevity. I think you're hearing the word transmedia come back into the conversation of like, what is IP that's strong enough that people want to participate across formats, that people want to have interactive or personalized versions of it. And so I think that's where the value is long term.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, when you're developing any IP or any property, it's like, does it have franchise value? Is there potential for sequels? What's the ancillary situation after the fact? And so those are all factors that we're thinking about as we're, developing, concepts internally.
We are out of time. I want to thank this fabulous panel for their candor and their insights, and thank you for having us. Thanks, everybody.